So we've had a great agenda so far, a great evening so far. We've basically touched base on everything international in Massachusetts. We've talked about RVC, all the different programs that we're a part of, and now we're going to get in touch now with the Skolkovo Foundation, one of our major partners here in the U.S. that we're trying to promote as well. Our next speaker is, I'd like to introduce the Chief Operating Officer of Skolkovo Foundation, Mr. Stephen Geiger.
You didn't really think that you were going to get through this evening with without at least one PowerPoint presentation, did you? Okay, we'll make it painless and quick. Thank you, Michelle, and I'd like to really thank our host here, Russian Venture Company, and Igor and Alex. Thank you very much. It's a great opportunity here to explain what Skolkovo Foundation is, what we do, and how we may work together with companies based in the Boston area. What is Skolkovo? Skolkovo is a government initiative. Russian government is trying to develop and grow its economy away from a over-reliance on mineral resources. It's trying to capitalize and commercialize its technology and its intellectual capital through developing its human capital in R&D, and at the same time try to create a number of globally competitive technology industries that can compete in the knowledge economies of the 21st century. Now, we have a couple guiding principles that we think are going to ensure our success, and first and foremost is we are open, transparent, and fair. These are not terms that are usually associated with Russia in most people's minds, but let's be realistic. What are we dealing with here? We're not dealing with an oil well or a timber or aluminum. We're dealing with human capital and intellectual capital. This is fully fungible. People can get on planes and they will migrate to the places where they can get rewarded for their ideas and where they can monetize their ideas and be respected. So we're dealing in this environment. We have to be open and transparent to attract the people and to retain the people. We also have to have international standards because we're competing with every country in the world. We're competing with Boston. We're competing with Silicon Valley. We're competing with Singapore. We need to be international standard. Now, the government is kickstarting this whole effort, but we also are involving immediately maximum private sector participation because eventually the private sector can take this over and do it in a more effective and efficient manner. The government is also subsidizing this at the beginning substantially, $4 billion over the next 3 years, but it has to be self-sustaining over at some point, medium, long term. It has to be financially self-sustaining or it's simply not worth undertaking. And finally, we have a physical layer of Skolkovo that I'll explain we're building, but we're also building a virtual layer as well. Now, why Skolkovo? Why is the government of Russia spending all this money and taking all this time doing this? It's a pretty simple reason. If you look at the typical normal technology life cycle curve, ideas start typically in basic research laboratories or in an entrepreneur's garage. They are not mature, they can't attract financing, they grow a little bit, they get some early stage VC, they grow a little more, they become a little more accepted, private equity takes it over, they IPO, and eventually they're commoditized. That's a normal environment. This is the environment that we're currently dealing with in Russia. There is a huge gap between the basic research and the real market demands for goods and services in the economy. And it's pretty simple. This is the legacy of the Soviet Union. Prior to 1991, all the researchers were getting their signals and orders from the state. In 91, that system disappeared and the market mechanisms never kicked in to fill that gap. So we're dealing with a gap where the researchers are disconnected with the market. The entrepreneurs have very little support or financing to help them develop, no angel financing, very little early stage VC. And the result is pretty obvious. Russia's large intellectual and scientific capital is simply not being efficiently commercialized or monetized. So our job is straightforward, difficult but straightforward. We need to close this gap with tools for innovation and commercialization. The way we're doing it is we're creating what we call an ecosystem. And that ecosystem is composed of the following elements: of an institute, an innovation center, the virtual layer, and the physical layer. Now, the first part is the institute. If you look at any ecosystem, Boston, Silicon Valley, you always find 1, 2, 3 world-class research-driven institutes. So this is what we're creating in Moscow. We're fortunate that we believe we've selected, and we have been selected by probably the strongest partner in the world, MIT. We're happy to have them as our strategic partner in building this institute. We believe it's going to be the world's first graduate institute that fully integrates education, research, entrepreneurship, and innovation. It's about 1,200 students, graduate and PhD level, and it's the core of the Skolkovo ecosystem. This is where the really innovative breakthrough technologies are going to be created. It's also the talent pool that's going to go into the economy and create their own businesses. It's a unique platform for global cooperation. It's an open platform. These are also terms that are not traditionally associated with Russia. But in the 21st century, Russia realizes to be a player, to be a leader in technology, they simply have to open, they have to collaborate, they have to create platforms such as Skolkovo to do this. Now, how does this stimulate innovation? Well, world-class R&D is first. The open platform creates fresh ideas. It's program-based. Let me go back a little bit. This is not going to be a normal university that's faculty-based. We believe that, and our partners at MIT believe that in the 21st century, the best way to create innovation is make it program-based. And Charlie Clooney, who follows me, will go a little bit into this, why this is so important to make it program-based. It's going to be overlaid here with a Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation. That is to embed in the students from day one how to be a researcher, how to be an entrepreneur, how to create your own company. They may not all choose to create their own companies, but at least they'll know how to. And finally, something, it's normal in America and Europe, but it's not normal in Russia. The idea of contract research is very undeveloped. So part of our job is to help the Russian corporations learn that this university is actually a powerful tool for them to develop technologies that can be embedded into their companies for commercial value. Now, the second element is the Innovation Center, and this is 5 technology clusters. It's a technopark, and it's our key partners. These clusters are chosen by the Russian government as the 5 areas of strategic importance. They're energy, IT, biomed, space, and nuclear. And the idea is these clusters find, support, and finance startups in these sectors. They pair them with international experts. They challenge and test their strategies. They provide an interface to VC. The idea here is you take the startups and you nurture them and carry them so they can be developed until the point that they're mature enough to be taken off your hands by the VC community, such as our partners at Russia Venture Company. And they also internationalize them and force them to compete against the best because they realize in order to survive, they have to compete on a global scale. The Technopark, this is the classic Technopark. It'll house about 350 startup companies. And so what do? It's classic Technopark. They're getting start-offs, spin-offs coming out of the university from the clusters, from other Russian universities, provides some infrastructure, some funding, some incubation, some corporate affordable services. The whole idea is to allow these early-stage startups at a very critical stage in their life to have the financing and support to survive to the next stage. Most won't survive. This is just the attrition that is in the technology sector. The ones that do survive, though, we hope to grow into significant companies. How do they create innovation? They nurture collaborative environments, services, interfaces. We also want to create a sense of urgency. You can't just come here and park your company. It's really up or out. We want to create the idea that being part of this Technopark is a privilege, and you either develop into a successful company, you fail, or you move out. Our key partners. We're fortunate that we have partnered with pretty much the who's who in the technology sector, in the bio sector, big pharma. These are a number of the partners that we have who have signed R&D partnerships with us. Now, how do they work? They work by creating R&D centers in Skolkovo, and they bring their best practices in R&D. They bring their scientists. They partner them with Russian scientists. We also expect them to co-invest in our startups, and it's a good advantage for them. They can get first crack at these interesting startups and obviously possibly acquire them as they go along. We also expect them to fund contract research at SIST. So it's a win-win partnership for them and for us. Now the city, this is, we want to make it an attractive place. We're trying to attract the best and the brightest, both in Russia and also internationally, come to live here. It has to be a physically attractive place. It has to be convenient. It has to be a place where people want to work and feel comfortable with their families to collaborate. So it's fairly large, 400 hectares, right outside the city limits of Moscow. It's about 25,000 people will be living and working there. The first phase will be completed by 2014, and we intend it to be relatively sustainable. And we also want it to be an easy place to work. We want it to be a place where you can come, do a one-stop shop, and have all these typical headaches of getting visas for your workers and housing and all that taken off your hands. We want you to be able to come in, start work, and focus on your business, because that's really what you should be doing. You shouldn't be worrying about how you get visas for your employees. Now, that's all fine, and if we are phenomenally successful, let's be realistic. A city of 25,000 people in a country of 140 million is only going to make a small dent. Now, the way we're going to make a meaningful impact on an economy the size of Russia is through what we call the virtual Skolkovo. And this is where we replicate what we're doing on the physical layer outside Moscow in 15 major cities in Russia. So we work with the existing universities and technoparks there to provide the same level of services and financing and contacts with VCs and corporates and academics that we're providing to our own participants in the physical Moscow region. So if we do this successfully, we think we can make a meaningful impact on the Russian economy. Some of the conditions that are provided by Russian law: holiday from taxes for 10 years, holiday from VAT. You pay about 1/3 the normal Social Security and labor cost, and you're exempted from VAT and custom duties. These are some of the things that are codified in Russian law that make it attractive, subsidies to come and work in our zone. Now, I think it's pretty important to explain what we are and what we aren't, how we differ from our partners such as Russian Venture Company and Rusnano. We provide financial grants. We do not make investments. We do not sit on boards. We do not take stakes in companies. We're nonprofit, so that means we can be an honest broker between investors and companies because we don't have a financial stake in the transactions. We finance, in terms of stage-wise, we finance R&D level things. If you're into production, you're already too advanced for us. It's better for you to work with the venture company or Rusnano. We do R&D level. We're also a platform for R&D and technology transfer. We are not a sales agent to help sell your product into Russia. And finally, yes, we do support international technologies as well as Russian technologies. Realistically, the money is coming from the Russian taxpayer, so naturally the bulk of the benefits of Skolkovo should go to Russian companies and Russian individuals and Russian companies. However, our mandate is also to identify and attract interesting international companies and startups because we need technology transfer. So we can finance both internal and external ideas and technologies. So it's a pretty ambitious program. It's large. Let's take a look at how our results for 2011 were. It was our first operational year. So on the institute level, we think we did a good job. We signed our deal with MIT. We have our first institute president hired. We are now actually developing the research activities. So we think we're on a good start there. On the corporate R&D level, we've signed 13 deals with technology companies, Cisco, IBM, Microsoft. They've committed over $400 million and create 1,200 R&D high-quality jobs in Moscow. On the startup level, we think we've done pretty well. We have 330 startups that we've identified and brought into our ecosystem, and we've provided over $200 million in grants to about 65 of these companies. On VCs, we have agreements with 24 funds to provide $290 million in co-financing. And on the city level, the master planning is completed, and the construction is already underway. On the Technopark, we have our first collective use center already opened in St. Petersburg doing thin film photovoltaic technologies, and we're already providing corporate services to our startups. On the branding, anyone who's in the marketing industry here will hopefully appreciate this. In less than 18 months, we already have over 50% of brand recognition inside Russia. We think that's a pretty amazing achievement, and now in 2012, we're going to extend that internationally to build the Skokova brand internationally. So, is this going to be done without pain? No. Is this going to be done in a couple years? No. This is a massive undertaking. We're going to make a lot of mistakes, but we're hopefully going to get things right. I would encourage you to keep in mind that large countries the size of Russia are like sort of super tankers. They don't turn on a dime. They turn by degrees. I think Skokova's main goal over the next couple of years is to begin to turn this large country into the right direction. By doing so, I think we're going to make a major impact on this great country. And in closing, I'd like to leave you with a quote from a famous son of this great state of Massachusetts, Bobby Kennedy. And he said, "Some men see things as they are and ask why. Others dream of things that never were and ask why not." I would encourage all of you to look at Russia and see the Russia that will be, and join us in Skokova and help building it. Thank you.